You're good to go.
Great. Thank you, Gracia. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Clater, and I am a dentist in North Carolina. I'm actually the associate director of the North Carolina Caring Dental Professionals. We work with substance use and stress burnout issues with dentists and dental hygienists in the state. And I want to welcome you to the New Dentist Survival Guide series. As you know, this is a four-part series, and tonight we're going to be focusing on the mental health and wellness part. And before we get started with the program, I kind of want to go around and kind of tell you what the format is tonight. We're going to be going for about an hour. And I'm going to do some introductory remarks, and then we're joined tonight. We have the opportunity here, Dr. Wanamaker, who a lot of you know. He's going to give us a perspective of the new dentist. And then we're going to hear a little bit from Dr. Bolin, and we're going to hear him talk about issues, burnout, how it can affect dentists. And then Matt Shapiro, is going to be speaking about the mental health and the stress and burnout aspect. And then we're going to have a Q&A towards the end. And at that time, during the talk, if you will, if you have any questions that come up or comments, certainly use the chat box, and I'm going to have them direct that towards you, Gracia, so that you can relay those at the end. And then at the very end, we'll have a kind of a panel wrap up. So I want to start by just telling you a little story, just real briefly here. Some of the things I do is not only substance use, but I want to tell you about a dentist that I worked with recently. The dentist was a 31-year-old graduate of a dental school. He'd been out about 3 years. And I got a call that he had been using Versed and that he was under a lot of stress, and that there's talk that he may be suicidal, he may be burned out. So after contacting the dentist, the term I'm burned out with dentistry. So I stopped him and I had the conversation about let's talk about that. What do you mean burned out? And he kind of gave a lot of the symptoms of exhaustion and all that kind of thing. And I said, well, do you like dentistry itself? If I could take away all the peripheral stuff like managing staff and ocean HIPAA and all the other things, and you could just do dentistry. Oh, I love dentistry. I said, so you're not really burned out with clinical dentistry. It's more all the other stuff in life. And he goes, yeah. And that was an eye opener to me, because a lot of times I think we get so involved in our own little world. Our worlds kind of collide, if you will, with our thoughts, and we kind of isolate ourselves into we think we know what's best. And he thought at that moment when he called me that the best thing to do was to give up dentistry. He wanted to be an airline pilot. I remember having the conversation with him and saying, really? I said, do you know how to fly a plane? He says, yeah, I've got 80 hours under my belt. I thought, wow, I said, do you have any idea, like American, United, Delta, what kind of hours those guys have? Hundreds of thousands. He goes, maybe not. Anyway, with that being said, I want to tell you that there is a solution. There are resources available, and this is some of the things we're going to talk about tonight. So the first thing I want to do to begin this meeting is to kind of direct the question over to Dr. Wanamaker. James, I'm going to call you James. You call me Bill. And tell us in your, some ideas or some issues that young dentists are having, new dentists are having, and how we can help. How can we, give maybe some light on these subjects?
Thanks, Bill. So I'm the chair of the New Dentist Committee. So I've heard from dentists all across the states, what their experiences have been this past year. It has been a very challenging year for new dentists. When we graduated dental school, none of us thought we'd be practicing dentistry during a pandemic. We've heard from associates who lost their jobs, new practice owners that couldn't pay the bills and had to close down for 3 months, new graduates whose contracts were canceled right out of residency, and then residents who even had to assist in the COVID morgues down in New York City at the height of the pandemic. And then when everything reopened, we had the backlog of patients to catch up with. To say all these events are stressful is an understatement. Thankfully, it's not all doom and gloom. We're still very fortunate to be able to practice in a profession that's consistently ranked as one of the top careers in America. And I have no doubt that we're going to rebound from this pandemic and come out stronger on the other end. The new dentist committee put together this survival guide series with the hope that we can give you the tools to not just survive, but thrive in these crazy times, so we can all come out stronger on the end. So today we're going to be talking about stress and burnout and substance abuse and all those factors that come along with things that many dentists have experienced this year. So I'll turn it over to Matt Shapiro.
Thank you, Dr. Warnick. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, and it's such a great opportunity to talk to your colleagues about this very important subject. So thank you so much. I am as Dr. Warnick said, my name is Matthew Shapiro. I'm the Associate Director of Public Affairs for NAMI New York State. So I'm here in Albany. We're the state chapter of NAMI, which is the largest grassroots organization in the nation dedicated to improving the lives of individuals living with a mental health issue, their families, and raising mental health education. And one of the great opportunities I really relish in is being able to do mental health in the workplace trainings. Obviously, you guys have a very unique workplace, so we'll tailor it to you. But I always start these presentations by saying it's so important that we have mental health in the workplace, because especially with our colleagues, is that people don't realize, but when you think about it like this, we spend more time about as much time at work and with our colleagues than we do with our families. I mean, when you think about a 40-hour work week and how many hours there are on the week, and you do the math, and it's pretty startling. So, I always kind of look at, you have your family at home, and then you have your work family too. And we obviously have a kind of a special thing going on at NAMI, the way we work. But, workplaces are very unique cultural things, and it really is a microcosm of our bigger society, in that it's up to us to take care of each other and our colleagues, and obviously all of you and your employees are under very stressful circumstances right now. As Dr. Warmaker said, none of you signed up thinking that you'd be sticking your hands in people's mouths during a global pandemic. And of course, it's not just you as the lead dentist, but your dental technicians, your reception staff. I mean, this is impacting everybody, and everyone's exposed to it. So I'm sure you're seeing a strain, not just within yourself, but with your employees as well. So what I want to briefly talk about is how to address the mental health things that you're facing personally, and how you can support your staff during this very critical time. And then are we going to take questions at the end all at once, or?
Yes.
All at once? Okay, great. So I won't take too much time, but like I said, obviously all of us are under a lot of stress right now, and obviously the medical profession as a whole is very stressful, especially for newer dentists who just got through school, which can be very stressful. And I'm sure you have student loans and other things going on that add to your stress. And so we already have a lot of stresses of our everyday life. You add in the pandemic, you add in what your families might be facing, and this is a really difficult period. So I hope that some of what I talk about and the resources I provide you are helpful for you, your employees, and your families as well, because it impacts them too. I'm sure your family members are very concerned, having you on the front lines and possibly bringing something home too. So it's so important too that you keep kind of check-ins with your family and how they're doing as well. So taking from the stop, like I said, this is a very demanding field to begin with, and obviously COVID-19 has created so many different layers. So what the most important thing to do is kind of check in on yourself and how you're doing, and what to do if you're not feeling good, and that's perfectly okay. Especially now, the CDC reported that 40% of the population has reported negative mental health effects from COVID. That number actually seems low to me, but we know in our helpline at work, we're getting a lot more calls from just people who are stressed, anxiety, depressed, and all of us are grieving something during this time too. The feeling of security, the ability to be with one another, be with our loved ones. We just got through the holidays, which I'm sure were tough for people too. So it's really important that you're honest with yourself and with your feelings right now. I mean, that's always important, but it's more important than ever. And kind of know what the warning signs are that that maybe you're starting to decompensate a little bit, or that your feelings or stressors are getting the better of you. And it's important that you know it for yourself, like I said, your employees, and your families as well. So, I mean, general things, feelings of starting to feel more irritable or angry than you normally would be. You find yourself being a little short-tempered, and that's not a normal thing for you. That's certainly a big warning sign. Obviously, feelings of anxiety, which is a little different than irritable, and depression and feeling lonely or isolated or just alone right now. No one, that's a really big symptom. Like I said, and isolating yourself from others too is kind of putting a shell around you, kind of like a turtle coming into a shell, and just feeling like you don't want to connect with people, and kind of that feeling also of fatigue, burnout, which was kind of talked about earlier. And then also, struggling to sleep, or not being able to get out of bed. Obviously, getting difficulty getting out of bed can certainly be a sign of depression as well. So that's really important. And this is really important too. If you're noticing that maybe you're drinking more than you normally have in the past, or maybe you didn't really drink before, but now you find yourself drinking, a lot of people are turning to substance use to self-medicate during this difficult time. And that's really important that you're aware of that. And if you see those changes, that's certainly a sign that there could be something concerning going on. So again, and changes in appetite and things like that too are very important. So, that's really, like I said, you want to look into it for yourself, but your employees as well, and your family. So what do you do if you start to notice these signs? In the general population, we talk about it normally takes people 10 years from the time they start noticing mental health symptoms in themselves to the time they actually start to receive care for their mental health issues. Now, there are many reasons that play into that. I mean, lack of access to mental health services, a lot of different things, insurance issues, things like that. But, one of the big things is still stigma. People are embarrassed to seek out mental health services. They think it's a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength to say, I'm not doing well, I need help. So, if you don't know where to turn for help, a lot of things that people are doing right now too, which has been a new service that's kind of started people on a recovery journey, is that the New York State Office of Mental Health is running a totally confidential, totally free, 7-day-a-week helpline. I can put the number in there when I finish speaking too. And it's very good that you have that. I can send also a graphic that you can put up in your office, because even putting something like that up in your office, saying, if you need help, here's this phone number, there's free services available. Because like I said, if you're struggling, someone else is probably struggling. And whether it's an employee or a patient, seeing that information and knowing that help is available can be tremendously beneficial. And basically, you can call with any type of problem and concern. And it was interesting, we work a lot with OMH, the Office of Mental Health. And when they started the lines, the calls were kind of short and people really trying to get over a crisis and move on. But now they've become like full talk therapy sessions. Now the calls can last 25 to 30 minutes. And then they can also get you connected with other services too. So that's a good way to start your mental health journey. But one thing I tell people too, and this is so important, finding a mental health professional that works for you can be tricky. I almost say it's like dating sometimes. It's a feeling out process. And if you have a therapist that you talk to, and I think it's very important that medical professionals have that outlet because you have such unique stressors and your staff has such unique stressors that, you find a therapist that works for you, and don't be afraid if you don't feel it clicking and you don't feel you're comfortable with that person, try to find somebody else. I think sometimes people look for reasons to walk away from therapy. Like, I joke with one of my family members, in some ways it's going to the gym. Some people can go in the gym, sit in the hot tub and think they're working out and don't understand why they're not losing weight, but you need to put in the work, right? You have to be on the elliptical machine. You have to be lifting the weights if you're going to the gym. And therapy is the same way. You really need to put in the work and you need to be comfortable with that person you're having the interaction with. So, when seeking out mental health services, make sure you're finding the provider that works for you. And if you're not happy with that provider, you can find somebody else. And, the most important thing I say, and the most important thing that we can all do, you're dentists, you're not mental health professionals, right? But we all play a role in creating mental wellness in our communities and in our workplaces. And really, that begins with listening. I mean, we started something called the I Will Listen campaign. I don't know how many people might have seen the movie The Big Short a few years ago. The Steve Carell character, that's actually based on a real person. He's a member of ours, and he was a big-time Wall Street, banker type investor.
Yeah.
And busy one day, his brother called him. He didn't pick up the phone to talk to the brother, and the brother ended up taking his life. And the person was always haunted by the question, what would have happened if I picked up the phone? If I had simply listened, would he still be alive today? So he really funded one of our big campaigns, which is the I Will Listen campaign. Like I said, none of us, no one here is a mental health professional, but we're all human beings. We all have empathy and we all have ears. And that's so important. And like I said at the beginning too, your employees sometimes as well as your own family members, and you start to see little changes in your employees. I think one of the things that people feel very uncomfortable about too is taking that first step with somebody else and then just gently saying, Bill, you seem a little off the last couple of days, not saying it, of course, in front of everybody, maybe taking them aside or doing it privately and saying, Bill, I see you seem a little down the last couple of days. Is everything okay? Do you need to talk? And sometimes I say it all the time, people need that door open for them. So one of the most important things we can do in our workplace is open the door for our colleagues and our employees and listen without prejudice. Because we never know what's going on in somebody else's life or what somebody else is struggling in. So when you open that door and ask the question, be prepared for what you might hear and listen without judgment. And whatever they tell you is that person's reality and that's what they're experiencing. And it's not for us to judge that, but for us to support them however we can and try to guide them towards help, whether it's by giving them a 1-800 number. And I'm going to be giving Grazie a bunch of other resources that she can share with everybody that have been very helpful. I put the Essential Worker Guide, which is very comprehensive and has lots of different links in there. So all of these things can be very beneficial. And again, we always say, we look at it like this, we all have our own mental health toolboxes. It's up for us to put those tools in there. And you want to make sure you have those tools available, not only to yourself, but to your employees as well. And I do want to say this as well, because we are hearing a lot from frontline workers' families and their concerns too. So again, if you see it in your children, your spouse, they're worried about you and they're worried about you bringing things home. Those are all real. And, don't be afraid to ask those questions, even if it's with your spouse or with your children. It's so important because it's all up, especially now when we're all kind of isolated, it's really up to us to take care of each other and those that are close to us. And we can all play a role in recovery, and that's what's so important. So, thank you so much. I'll be happy to answer specific questions when we get to the end. And thank you for the time for listening, and thank you for supporting each other and creating mentally healthy workplaces.
And Matt, to your point, if I may just interject here before Dr. Bowling comes in, And I work a lot with people who are in recovery from your 12-step programs and stuff. And one of the things that we ask them to do is to get a sponsor, whether, if they're in AA for Alcoholics Anonymous or NA for Narcotics Anonymous, to have a sponsor, someone they can communicate with. And we always used to hear this adage that, just call them. Well, some people would say, I cannot pick up that 15-pound phone. They can't quite get it to their ear because they're ashamed of what they've done, or they feel guilty, or they just want to isolate. One of the things that I have found, exactly what you said, Matt, I couldn't agree with more with everything you said, was one of the things that I recommend, and I've actually done myself, is to, if I can't help myself, help someone else. And so I will take my staff in individually and say, how can I make your day better? What is it? I noticed, just like you said, the same thing. I noticed you're a little off. Do you need to talk? And usually people say, no, I don't need to talk. And then they'll come back later and say, can I do have something to say? And what that does, it gets you out of yourself, and it actually helps you. It's kind of selfish to do that, but in a way it does help yourself. And then it may open you up to where you can reach out to like Dennis and say, Dennis, I need some help. And so, Dennis, I'm going to turn to you and say, Dennis, I need some help. What would you tell the dentist in your program up there in New York? Thank you.
Well, no, and that's such a great point. I just want to piggyback on two things that you said that I think are so important there. Number one, that peer model, like when you talk about AA and a 12-step program, that peer model is so important. We do try to replicate that in mental health and everything that we offer in NAMI. And I should have stated this before, what we do offer, in case, again, people are looking for services, we offer free support and education programs, all free of charge to members of the public. And all of it is peer led. So if you're taking a course for families, it's taught by a family with lived experience. And if you're taking a peer class, it's a peer with lived experience. And we're actually working on a bill right now that would create a state-funded peer-to-peer program for various types of frontline workers. Because again, just kind of like 12-step, only people with similar experiences really know what those experiences are, what it's like to be a dentist in this time or be a frontline worker in that time. So that shared experience is so important. And the second thing that you said, that again, when you open the door to, you gotta give people time to, that first step is the hardest. And some people do need help saying they need help. So, and one thing I forgot to say too is you can't have mental health without physical health and vice versa too. So, I mentioned substance use before. A lot of times people are also using junk food and unhealthy food as a way to self-medicate, especially for dentists, people who are on their feet all day and working. Eating healthy has such a big, and getting out and getting fresh air and really taking care of your physical health will also impact your mental health.
Thank you, Matt. That's great advice. Great insight. Dennis?
Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you, Matt. And it's been very informative so far. And I promise you that I will be brutally honest. I'm going to tell you some things about my life that maybe you're not going to be comfortable with. And I identify with some of the things that you were talking about too, Bill, about shame. And there's a difference between shame and guilt. And shame is that I'm bad, I'm evil, I'm worthless. And guilt is something, I've done something wrong and I need to fix it. And a lot of the dentists that we deal with, because of their substance use disorder and maybe co-occurring mental illness, have a lot of shame issues, and they're afraid to reach out. And I understand that. The other thing too is we dentists, we're kind of funny folks. I mean, I'm very lucky to have some mentoring for many years by Dr. Gene Hittleman, a psychologist at NYU at the dental school, and Dr. Lynn Tepper. She ran the behavioral science program at Columbia. And they've kind of helped me a lot to identify some characteristics that seem to run with dentists, and we're folks who we want to make solutions. We want to fix things. And I can remember saying to a therapist once, and she said to me, Dennis, you really can't sit. No, you can't sit in your discomfort, can you? And I said, well, who the hell can? I don't want to sit in my discomfort, but part of what Matt was talking about is when you do therapy, you got to sit in some discomfort because it's opening the can on top of what's going on inside of you. So, but anyway, the passion of my life has been working with folks coming into recovery. I'm a practicing dentist. I practice in Manhattan. I graduated Columbia in '78 and did my GPR at Columbia, and then I started right away in private practice. And I remember all too well what it was like to be a young dentist with the stresses. And we had babies come right away. We had my oldest son came about a year after we were married, and Emery came about a year and a half later, and we had babies, and then there was bills, and then there was stress. And one of the things that I became an associate of a dentist in Manhattan, and one of the things I noticed that he would do at the end of the day is he'd sit down in one of the chairs and he would call it draining the lines. And he'd just sit down and just suck down the nitrous for about 10 minutes, and he'd hang it up and go home feeling a little bit better. And he would look to me as on the way out and said, when you're a dentist, you just need something. And that's what I related to. What's the reward for us? How do we make us? What do we do to cope? We're people who like to fix things. We like solutions, and I don't have solutions. But what we could talk about tonight is how do we cope? And I know as a dentist, and a little bit nutty as I am, just learning to cope is very difficult for me. And I'm no genius with this either. When this thing broke out around March 15th, I had a staff meeting on March 16th in my office, and I let everybody go Friday, March 20th. They went on unemployment, and I started to call my insurance broker and cash in some whole life insurance because I didn't know how I was going to pay the bills. And that Sunday, I ended up in the emergency room being treated for paroxysmal AFib, just stress mediated. So here I am, I'm in practice more than 40 years, and I don't have the answers. But you know what? I know where to ask for help. And that's something that, as a dentist, it's very hard for me to do because I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to look like I need somebody else's help, that I'm the big guy, I can fix it, I can take care of anything. And well, frankly, I've learned the hard way that I can't. So I started to do the same things that my boss was doing, my attending dentist. I would start at the end of a tough day and sit down in that chair, and I wanted to forget about my bills. I wanted to forget about the stress. I wanted to forget about the patients who didn't want to pay me because it's business and not personal, and all that other stuff that used to really piss me off. And I'd sit down and I'd put on the nitrous oxide and I'd have it for 15 minutes or half an hour and then go home. Well, what happened was I remembered when I was back in dental school and someone asked me whether I liked nitrous oxide. And I said I never had it. And he took me into the oral surgery clinic, which was not in those days under lock and key. And it was a Friday afternoon. And my friend Charlie dialed up 50% nitrous, 50% oxygen. And I thought this was the greatest chemical orgasm ever. I mean, it really lit my lights and struck my bell. And I said, I'm going to file this away for future reference. And what I didn't realize at the time, because I'm the oldest son of an alcoholic, and alcoholism is big in my family, that I have 3 to 4 times the risks of becoming chemically dependent as opposed to somebody else. I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. That had to be explained to me later as I came to grips with what this illness of addiction is all about. So I went back, and then, maybe I was using once a week, and then maybe twice a week, and then longer and longer. And then I was passing out in the chair. And then certain things started to happen. I was raised kind of a strict Catholic family, and you don't lie. And if you do, you go to confession. And, I started to tell my wife stories. Sorry, honey, I have an emergency tonight. And something in me started to change where the drug became more important to me than those folks in my life who had a lot of meaning, my wife and my babies and all that other stuff. the drugs started to say, I can make my own rules. I can start to rationalize. I can change this to suit me. And I didn't realize that the drugs were starting to change my brain. I was starting to drink more. I was becoming cross-tolerant to alcohol. I started to, I remember one time I missed one of my kids' birthdays because I was stoned on nitrous. And I had started to change and I had crossed the line. And for me, crossing the line was really starting to lie. You know, my personality was changing. I couldn't really control the obsessions. So, you know, for me, I started to, you know, my day was, I love dentistry. I've always loved dentistry. But my day was sort of, I'm kind of, you know, sort of white knuckling it and gritting my teeth. So the end of the day comes and I can get stoned and forget it all. And, you know, it worked for a long time. I'm not going to say that, you know, drinking is bad and nitrous oxide. No, I still have nitrous oxide in my office, and I'll talk about that later. But it's just not for me, you know, that I'm the one who somehow had to come to grips with the fact that I need to make deep personal psychic changes in my life if I'm going to live and if I'm going to do what I have to do. And it's been a journey that it's taken, you know, 38 years of sobriety to figure some things out. First of all, I only came to the realization a few years ago that I'm not a type A person. You know, I thought to be successful in dentistry, you got to be a type A and you got to run at 60 miles an hour all the time. And, you know, my type A was, I had type A anxiety, but I'm a type B person. So inside I'm running on 16 cylinders all the time. And I needed something, or I felt I needed something to slow that all down so that I could deal with you folks. I could deal with my patients. I could look like that kindly, listening, you know, TV doctor that everyone wanted to relate to. And I wanted to be that kind of person. So I had to go through a lot to discover that who I really am, because we dentists, we tend to sort of deny our emotional problems. We tend to compartmentalize, you know, emotional problems. We don't have time for that stuff. I got to do CE. I got to keep up with my production. I got to pay my salaries. I got to meet those salaries once a week. I got to pay those loans back to dental school. I know you folks graduating now $200,000-$300,000 with loans. That's unbelievable. You know, so I can't imagine what kind of anxiety you have about that. But I sympathize with a lot of that because I was trying to get rid of all that anxiety and sort of difficulties with patients and maybe struggles with my associate dentist because I couldn't deal. I didn't have the tools to deal with it. And I was too afraid to reach out for help. As a matter of fact, I couldn't even comprehend what I was feeling. I just knew I was feeling bad. As a matter of fact, I had an assistant once who came in on me after hours, and I'm using nitrous oxide. She says, Dr. Bolin, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this so often? Why are you using all this nitrous oxide? And I remember saying, Eva, because I feel bad all the time. Don't you feel bad? And she goes, and this was kind of a revelation to me. It's kind of an epiphany. She said, no, I kind of feel good most of the time. And I didn't, you know, and I didn't realize how drugs had changed me, that they were depleting my mesolimbic system, and I'm blowing out all my dopamine and all my endorphins on getting high. And I did feel dysphoric. And I didn't realize that I was, you know, had contracted a brain disease, that I needed to release dopamine to feel normal. I needed to take a drug or I needed to drink. And when I talk to someone now, if I talk to a dentist, because that's my, you know, and Dr. Bob Herzog works with me too on the Committee on Chemical Dependency. When I talk to a dentist who tells me I need to take Xanax to feel normal, I know I got a dentist with a problem. I needed to take nitrous oxide or alcohol to feel quote unquote normal, because that's the only way I could release any dopamine from my limbic system to feel okay, so I could get through my day. I didn't know what to do. You know, I have, you know, when one of the things I do with, and we do with dentists now, is we try to identify something in their lives that is meaningful. And what was meaningful in my life and things were starting to change is my wife and my kids. And she's pointing out to me that I developed gastritis and you know, and I was getting these hallucinogenic flashbacks in the shower, and I was developing peripheral neuropathy, which is really not great when you're a dentist. and all these other ailments. And I would continue to show up for work. I was sort of from the work hard, play hard school. And I didn't realize I was burning the candle at both ends, that we really need rest. I was isolating from my friends, isolating from my family, missing all kinds of family events. And the problem is, for dentists and for us, is that the last thing to go is our clinical skills. I was still turning out good dentistry. I remember going back to check on stuff that I had done when I was using, and everything was good. But the problems, first of all, the problem is me, but the problems developed with my family, the problems developed with my friends, the problems developed with my staff and my senior dentists that I was working with, that, they may not, in early to mid-stage disease, they may not manifest themselves as situations where I remember a dentist prepped for a quadrant of amalgams and didn't put the amalgams in. It wasn't quite, when that happens, you're talking about end-stage illness. But I had to reach out, I had to start, because what made me reach out? What makes any human being want to change? When you have a sufficient amount of pain in your life, you're willing to sort of reach out and make a change. And certain things started to happen that my wife basically called me out and made me believe that she might be leaving me and things like that if I didn't make some changes. And I had to call somebody. I called another dentist who used to serve on our committee, and out of gratitude for what Ralph did for me that day, I serve in this committee today, and I've been serving on this committee since 1985, 35 years, for a chance to give back for what I've received, because I got my life back. And what Ralph told me, we went out for dinner, and he said, "Dennis, do you want to have a beer?" And I said, "Sure, Ralph. I'll definitely have a beer," because I was anxious as hell. There wasn't an antiperspirant in the world was about to work while I'm talking to this guy who I knew was an AA. And by that time, my dad had started to go to AA meetings, and I knew that guys in AA didn't drink. So he orders a beer, I order a beer, and immediately I'm uncomfortable because there's a guy in AA across the table from me who's got a beer in front of him. I got so nervous, I drank about 3 beers while I watched his doing nothing except go flat. And after about 20 minutes of talking, and I'm sort of half listening, and some of the stuff is, he's telling me, that the problem's not alcohol. Look at these people, they're having drinks, they're a little bit more sincere, they're a little bit more merry, but I can't drink because something changes in me when I drink. And he said, "Dennis, would you like this beer?" And I said, "Hell yeah, Ralph, I hate to see a good beer go to waste." And he pushed it across the table to me, and he said, "I was trying to make a point with you today that today I have a choice. I have the choice to either pick up that beer or not pick up that beer." And I appreciated that story, and I tell that story every time I tell my story, because I didn't have that choice. If there was nitrous oxide in front of me, I had to use it if there was an opportunity. If there was alcohol in front of me, I had to use it. I did use other drugs. I did inhale. We used to smoke marijuana in the office sometimes. This is back in the late 70s and early 80s, when I was a young dentist, that there was kind of the Wild West for drugs in those days. And in some ways, the Wild West may be coming back, but it certainly was the Wild West then. And I figured that I'm entitled to this because I'm a dentist. And there's a lot of key things that happens to us that we don't realize because of the stress and anxiety that are constant companions to my life and the constant companions to your life, and I can't fix that, but how do I learn to cope with it? And certain things start to happen. We lack respect for these drugs that we work with. We think that they're toys, things that we can play with. That was certainly my attitude. I had the attitude that, if I had some problem, I'm entitled because of my training to self-medicate and to and use basically self-prescribe whatever I want. I felt I was entitled to do that. I felt by the study of pharmacology that knowledge would protect me from the effects of drugs. Talk about grandiosity, okay? I was grandiose. And the other thing too is, it's availability. We as healthcare professionals, by virtue of our having the power of the prescription, we can virtually write for a lot of stuff. It would look funny if we wrote for Adderall because we don't treat attention deficit disorder or narcolepsy. But at that time, the staff used to ask me to write for diet pills, which were amphetamines, and I did it. Crazy as it was, I wouldn't do it now. I mean, now I'd probably get prosecuted by OPD. But there's all kinds of crazy stuff that I thought that I was entitled to do. As a matter of fact, by law, we cannot self-prescribe.
Yeah.
We think that we can get around that by prescribing to our wives or staff members, but that's called diversion. That also earns us a jail time and loss of a professional license. So there's all kinds of things that dentists do and think that they're entitled to do to treat their own stress, anxiety, and burnout.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I have stress, anxiety, and burnout? Sure I do. I mean, one of the best things that's happened to me, what am I experiencing right now is that I'm tired all the time. I have trouble sleeping. I wake up at 3 o'clock to go to the bathroom and I can't go back to sleep because the mind takes over. And then I have difficulty concentrating. It's hard to focus because there's all this background music about COVID. And, if my staff gets a cold, she's got to go out for 3 days and get tested. That's already happened to me twice. So one of the best things that's happened to me is I got vaccinated. One of the best things you can do for your stress, get vaccinated. But please God, I hope most of you have gotten vaccinated because I'm sleeping better. I'm concentrating better because all that background anxiety, a lot of it has dropped out of the picture. But there's certain things that we could do. I don't want to take up too much time here, but that the worst thing that an alcoholic in recovery can do is isolate. And I know that Dr. Herzog and I are dealing a number of more dentists coming into treatment, and we're dealing with the dentists that we've dealt with over the years having difficult emotional problems, and we're having dentists who are relapsing. This is a disease that is a relapsing disease, and the worst thing we can do is isolate. We need that connection peer to peer that Matt was talking about. And what do? We try and Bob Herzog will back me up with this. We try to create a safe space for dentists to talk to us. We need you guys to be brutally sincere because we've been there. And we need to create a safe space. And after we create a safe space, we're going to love you until you learn to love yourself. Because all I can remember is the looks of disgust that my staff had for me when I was using. And all I can remember is the self-loathing and self-hatred that I had as an addict. Here am I, a Columbia graduate, did very well in my class, and I'm an addict. Here I am, a doctor, and I've become my dad, an alcoholic. Everything I said I wasn't going to do. I come from an alcoholic family. I got to respect genetics. If you come from a family with alcoholics, respect your genetics. Think about, not using anything, not drinking. Respect your genetics. The other thing too is think about what you're doing to self-medicate your anxiety. There's a lot of drugs besides opioids that are flying under the radar these days.
Yeah.
How many times have I heard a young person say to me, I need an Addy to get through the day? Ritalin, Concerta, Vyvanse, Adderall, big problem. A lot of self-medication, a lot of entitlement. Xanax for anxiety, Klonopin for anxiety. We don't talk about these things. They're a huge problem for addiction. Getting someone off of benzodiazepine is worse than taking someone off of heroin. And 10,000 more people died of drug poisoning between the end of 2019 and the middle of 2020 because people are isolating. People need 12-step meetings. People need connection. They need to share, and they're not getting it. And just a couple of other things I just wanted to mention just to wrap up, and just in terms of thinking about prevention with using substances. I never made a decision. So I always, when I speak to the students, make a decision about what you want to drink, how much you want to drink, when you drink. Should I drink? Should I use marijuana? Should I vape? Is it healthy? What am I doing to myself? All right, make a decision. We never make these decisions, but I'm imploring you to make a decision. Respect your medical history. If you have a history of drug addiction and alcoholism in your family, respect it because you're at a much higher risk of contracting substance use disorder. Use healthy stress relief. One of the things that we forgot, it's sort of an old-fashioned concept, is our friends. One of the things that got me through COVID is really every day talking to my referring dentist about the PPP, about the provider healthcare fund, all these other things just to keep myself afloat. I need the companionship. I need my colleagues. I need my friendships. I need to share my pain with my friends, not just surface talk and bullshit, but really share my pain, what's going on inside me, and learning to take my emotional temperature. You know, we don't like to do that. We're dentists. We need to learn to, how am I really feeling? What am I feeling? Am I feeling fear? Am I feeling anxiety? Am I feeling loneliness? Am I feeling tired? You know, I'm learning to identify what those feelings are. And then those alternatives that Matt talked about are so important. You know, I need to get to the gym with my trainer at least twice a week. I need to get outside. I need my hobbies. And whatever floats your boat, whatever your passion, we need to do something outside of dentistry, because dentistry is great, but we need some relief. We need some make your own rewards. We all need to create healthy rewards to keep balance in our lives. Thanks for letting me share with you guys.
Thanks, Dennis. And if I may, just briefly here at the end, kind of wrap this up, and we'll take some questions. But it's interesting to me hearing both of you speak, if you will, the spectrum from dealing with anxiety and stress, and maybe even living a fear-based life. If you make decisions or you find that you're living a life where everything's fear-based, you know, who's going to take something from me? What am I going to lose? What's going to happen next? And then you have these, what I call free-floating anxiety, just trauma that comes out of nowhere, like this patient's going to sue me, or my wife's going to leave me, or these things like this. Where does it come from? A few minutes ago, I was fine. And then all of a sudden these things come. If you're living that kind of life and you see that human beings have to feel, we don't want to feel pain. So we do something. And one of the things we do is, like you said, we use substances, and the end result, if you will, doesn't always go linear, but let's say the end result is addiction or substance use disorder. And so the purpose of this new dentist thing, I think, is to kind of say, you know, you don't have to go that route. We can make identifying things. We can see identifiers today, and I'll just tell you a few. One is in dental schools, we're seeing more and more substance use, abuse, and trying different substances. The use is up now. That's not coincidental. That is because people are experiencing more fear, uncertainty. You know, they don't really know what's going to happen next. We also see these things like where you process things through what I call introversion, where you're not willing to ask for help. Sometimes it's hard to do. It's very hard to do. Having that conversation about your student loan. I owe $300,000. How am I going to pay that back? One of the answers I got one time from somebody was, well, I'm a dentist. I can make money and pay that back. And I said, what's your plan? Is it a 30-year plan, a 15-year plan, a 7-year plan? Well, I don't know, but I'll pay it back. And I got people in their 70s still paying off loans. I mean, come on. You know, we got to look at these things. We got to have these discussions. If you sit down with someone and you talk about, you know, I've got $150,000 I need to pay off. Let's do it in 7 years. What does that look like? What does that monthly payment look like versus 30 years? And then when you get in this whole thing of emotions, we were made to be in relation with people. I mean, this isolation thing is so huge. It is so huge. And I just encourage you, if you find yourself, I mean, what I'm hearing both of you say, if you find yourself not being able to pick up that phone or help someone, find somebody you can talk to, because I'm getting tired of reading these headlines. You know what I mean? And the new dentist out there, you've got a wonderful future ahead of you. You really do. But it's challenging times. It's different times. I mean, I remember back in 1980 when I came in, interest rates were 18%. You know, what are they now? 3? You know, I don't know what they are, but they're low. I remember, you know, the economy was not in too good a shape, but things are different now. The economy's better, but we have all the pandemic and we have everything going. Define yourself. If you don't know what your practice should look like, or you want your practice to look like, find somebody that you respect in the profession. Like if Dr. Boland's practice is someone, or, you know, another dentist you have in your town that you say, I like the way he practices. I like what he does. I like the technology he uses. I like the way he just presents himself. Go talk to him or her and say, have the discussion. How do you do it? What are you doing? Yeah, you don't have to do stainless steel crowns the rest of your life unless you want to. You don't have to do partials the rest of your life unless you want to. And you say, but I've got to do it all. No, there are ways to, there's a private practice model where you can go out on your own. It still exists. People don't talk about it now. And then the corporate model's there. You can use the corporate model. You may be a perfect fit for corporate. So I just encourage you, these signs of exhaustion and just not caring, becoming very cynical, and just don't really care much about people, don't care about your work. That's a red flag. That's like, let's talk to somebody before we get down that road where we're sticking that needle in our arm or smoking something that we shouldn't be smoking, because that could be a deadly road to go down. And so I never in my 40 years of dentistry seen a time than today, 2021, and obviously 2020, but 2021, that the environment, whether it's socially, politically, mentally, medically, whatever term you want to use, is open to getting people help. So the help is there. The help is there. It's just reaching out. So Rosie, I'm through preaching now. So if you've got any questions or any comments or anything.
Well, we don't have any questions right now. If anyone has any questions you want to throw it in the chat, I can definitely share that. I do just want to share, we had intentions of pulling a packet together to share a lot of these tools. We're a little delayed in pulling everything together, but a lot of more resources have kind of come out of this conversation. And so I think there's going to be a more robust toolkit that we're sending out to everyone, just listing the type of resources, kind of the identifying ways to identify burnout and ways to kind of cope with them as well. So we'll definitely be sharing that information with everybody here as well, and sharing this video too, so that you can share it with your friends as well, in case they just need to be reminded of resources that are just challenges that everybody's having.
Okay, all right. And Dr. Wanamaker, James, have we touched on the areas that you sense, or is there something we need to clarify, or maybe we didn't touch on that you'd like for the panel to talk on?
No, I think you guys covered everything. There's a wide range of experiences and emotions that everyone has had during this time, ranging from small to very large. So I think you guys touched on that range and helped us see how to identify those and how we might be able to manage that and hopefully avoid going down some paths that we don't want to go down.
Right.
The other thing, Bill, I wanted to point out is that our committee has a hotline number. It's a NISDA, 1-800-255-2100. We're a confidential hotline. We want to protect your license. If you know a colleague, a friend who has some difficulty, or even office staff, in my career, I've fired 4 of my staff for alcoholism because they wouldn't go into treatment. We all need support with that stuff. So we're happy to be a resource. And Dr. Bob Herzog is a trained interventionist. He's done plenty of family interventions. We know how to do it, and we know how to help. We don't have all the answers, but we know how to help.
Right, right. Matt, do you have any closing remarks, or?
No, I mean, again, I want to first of all, thank Dr. Boland for sharing his incredible story. It's not easy to do, and I'm always amazed when I hear stories like that, just how willing people are to share. And the thing that I say all the time about NAMI families, and Dr. Boland, I think you're an honorary NAMI family member now, is that the greatest gift, that we have is being able to take our painful experiences and use them to help others. And that means what we've experienced wasn't for nothing. And you're certainly the epitome of that. So, I'm sorry you've been through everything that you've been through, but thank you so much for sharing, because I guarantee you telling your story is going to help somebody. And I hope someone listening who might be struggling now knows that you're not alone, and you can be on the top of your field and the top of your profession and still have these struggles. One thing I did forget to say real quick, just important too, we were talking about family members, and especially if your spouse or partner, whatever, is still working from home and there are kids at home, realize the stress that they're going through now too. And, there could also be some resentment. You get to get out of the house and not deal with the kids and the homeschooling and all of that too. So, like I said, just listen to, whether it's your spouse, your your workers, your colleagues, just listen to each other. That's the most important thing we can do.
And thank you, Matt. And we had yesterday I had the opportunity to speak at East Carolina University, the dental school there, and I did a little section on what I call the super mom and the women and what they're experiencing during this time, not only at work but at home and having to be everything to everybody, the stresses that women go through. I think it's a huge area that needs to be explored more and discussed more. And that's one of my passions, to really make that happen. And we're looking at things here in North Carolina that we can do. But I'll end, if it's okay, since we didn't have any questions, Grazia, and I'll go ahead and close this out here. I did want to kind of go back to my story that I started with at the beginning about the young 31-year-old dentist who was using Versed and thought he was burned out. There's a part of the story I didn't tell you, and it really hit me right here. It struck a chord with me. When I got to talking to him, I said, so I went to your website before I called you, and I noticed on there that you do sinus lifts, bone grafts, implants, hemisections, apicoectomies, bone grafting for periodontal surgery, attached gingival grafts, and the list just went on and on. And I said to him, I said, I mean, I know people that are in their 60s that spend their entire life to do maybe one of those procedures really well. I'm not saying you can't do them all really well, but where did you get your training? And he says, oh, I can't do all those. And I said, well, you've got it advertised on your website that you do all this. He said, I have to. And I said, why do you have to? He said, because I don't want to run away any patient. I have a lot of student loans to pay. If I can just get them in here, maybe I can tie them into my practice. And I just thought, that to me, that's so sad, because my alarm's going off here. I'm sorry. I thought that was so sad that he had put his reputation out there just to get patients in, and he was struggling really with the student loan. So, man, help is out there. And I just encourage you to keep in contact with the New York State Dental Association. Grazia, I know you do everything, and you will do anything and everything for everyone as far as resources. Certainly feel free to contact me, and I'm sure Matt and Dennis would go along with the same thing, and Bob, definitely. And so if there are no other comments or anything from you, Grazia, we'll go say over and out, and enjoyed the opportunity to be here tonight, and hope everything went well.
I'm very, very grateful to be here, and it's an attitude of gratitude for recovery that gets me through every day. And I just try to be grateful for the roof over my head sometimes, and just a meal on the plate and a bed to sleep in. And we're going through some tough times, but there's always something to be grateful for.
Yeah. Thanks.
We really appreciate everyone volunteering their time tonight for this program. So thank you again, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
Bill.
you, everyone. And I just want to add
Thank you.
quickly, our next survival guide series is March 23rd at 7 p.m. And that is all about how to start out in dentistry by finding a practice, finding a job, potentially buying a practice, all about how do you succeed your first few years out from a practice standpoint.
Thanks, James.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you for
Thank you, everyone.
having me.
Thank you, everybody.